The 1960s was a spirited decade that prompted a dramatic shift in American culture. But for all the peace, love, and rock and roll, the 1960s were some of the most tumultuous years in history. Threat of nuclear disaster loomed with the Cold War and the Cuban Missile Crisis. In Vietnam, fighting intensified, and U.S. involvement sparked controversy at home. And the Civil Rights Movement, which had gained momentum in the previous decades, marched on in the 60s with organized sit-ins and protests. And the Houston community was active in the fight for civil rights and social change.
I think that the key in all of that was that there was a climate that had started. And that climate said that it is time to break down segregation, it is time to deal with homelessness, it is time to do something about those who have been put in jail.
It was during this turbulent time in history that Houston Metropolitan Ministries officially got its start. From its earliest days, the organization saw the importance of bringing people of different faiths, ages, races, and abilities together.
We must not forget that overarching story that unites us all, and that is that God loves us, and that we best respond to God's love by our love for God's children, especially the most vulnerable among them.
In 1967, Houston Metropolitan Ministries formed the Foster Grandparents Project, a program that connects seniors with special needs children for mentoring and tutoring. But it was in 1969 that leaders of Christian faiths joined with Jewish congregations and became an incorporated organization.
I don't think there was any other particularly organized group such as this. Perhaps there were some meetings between individual religious leaders, but I don't think there was any structured organization that brought representatives from the different religions together.
If the 1960s was a time of protest, the 1970s proved to be an era of activism and calls for change. The 70s saw a rise in social justice movements that sought to bring equality and opportunity to all Americans. The organization was deeply involved in desegregating public schools throughout the 60s and 70s, and they took a firm stance on other social movements as well.
In the 70s, for instance, in 1974, the board of Houston Metropolitan Ministries adopted a resolution in support of United Farm Workers of America. It had impact. It was the first time a group of faith leaders had really taken a strong stand on an issue like that. And I think it showed that it can be done around almost any issue.
Amidst the global and national issues taking shape in the 70s, the city of Houston had community needs that had to be addressed. It was in response to those needs, Houston Metropolitan Ministries founded programs that exist still today. The Meals on Wheels program began in the 70s to address hunger among homebound senior citizens. Houston Metropolitan Ministries also introduced the Bread program, a congregation-based food pantry to feed families in need.
We didn't ask, what is the religion of the person who's getting the meal? What is their background? Where do they come from? If God expects anything of us, no matter our faith, it is that we try to make the world a better place for other people.
The organization implemented the Retired and Senior Volunteer Program, RSVP, and started a community service option program for nonviolent offenders. Houston Metropolitan Ministries focused on advocacy. The school community advocates and jail chaplaincy programs were formed to give society's forgotten populations the opportunity for a brighter future. Things were looking up in Houston, too, with the big oil boom feeding the economy. However, the war's end introduced a new problem for Houston when unprecedented numbers of refugees arrived in Texas. That, and the impending oil bust, would shape the nature of Houston Metropolitan Ministries' work in the coming decades. Like the decades before it, the 1980s were years of continual change. Americans had a front row seat to national and global news. In the early 80s, the U.S. experienced the worst recession it had seen since the Great Depression, and Houston was no exception. The city had enjoyed years of prosperity, but the oil bust left 1 in 8 Houstonians without work, and more than 200,000 homes vacant. And Houston Metropolitan Ministries set out to create programs that would serve the changing needs of the community.
We were in jail chaplaincy, for one thing. We provided chaplains to the jail. We were involved with various kinds of hunger projects. We were involved with dialogue through the Interreligious Council. We, of course, had Meals on Wheels.
Programs like Family Connection, Edge for Youth, and the Youth Victim Witness Program offered shelter, counseling, educational services, job training, and court accompaniment for children and families in need. An unprecedented number of refugees changed the landscape and the dynamics of the city. In response to that, Houston Metropolitan Ministries created Refugee Services, a program that continues to assist refugees from around the world today.
We accept a limited number of refugees, but they have to be resettled, and organizations like IM play a critical role in that, in welcoming them and literally providing them with all the basics that they need to get resettled in the United States.
We had a definite commitment to refugees, which really did begin to open the interfaith door. I think in the same way we, talk in more narrow terms about unity and justice and the like, in the interfaith world, it is that sense of being able to respect one another is the door to being able to start on that climb for interfaith relations.
By the end of the 80s and the start of the 90s, it seemed that efforts to unite were taking place around the globe. While the 90s saw its share of turbulence, the decade is widely considered one of relative peace and improved global relations. Houston Metropolitan Ministries focused on inclusion and collaboration too. They changed their name to Interfaith Ministries for Greater Houston to reflect their reach and goals for the future, and created the slogan, "The Strength of Shared Beliefs." It was during this time that Rabbi Roy A. Walter of Congregation Emmanuel learned of the severity of hunger in Houston and advocated to unite the many silos of churches working towards ending hunger to redistribute their funds to support Houston Metropolitan Ministries.
When I was here, I think one of the things that we went through a period of growth in the sense of the involvement of the Islamic society, the Buddhist community, the Hindu community. So there was a time of looking around the table and saying, who's not here?
The most important meal of the day turned into a breakfast with champions for some local students this morning. Interfaith Ministries and I Have a Dream sponsored the breakfast to promote their summer food program.
It was during this decade that the work to end hunger in Houston had a large-scale impact, as the organization was supplying food to 94 pantries in the area and was a launching point for the Houston Food Bank. It was also in the 90s when Interfaith Ministries adopted a new mission to bring people of diverse faith traditions together for dialogue, collaboration, and service as a demonstration of shared beliefs.
Wow, what a great mission statement. Because although we have different dogma, we have different deities, we all have basic, fundamental beliefs, and starting with taking care of people less fortunate, honoring your elders, taking care of your parents. But the basic one that we all have that is so important in all religions, you have, and that's what I've learned at IM, love one another.
The organization saw pronounced growth in existing programs like Meals on Wheels, the Hunger Coalition, Refugee Services, and the Retired Senior Volunteer Program. And they continued to implement new programs like the MLK Youth Day of Service to provide an opportunity for young people to serve side by side with those from different backgrounds. They also joined forces with and offered support to various organizations and campaigns like Kids of Summer, the Campaign for the Homeless, the Second Family Program, and Houston's Promise.
When people of different faiths, different backgrounds, different ethnicities come together, often there's a barrier that needs to be broken down for people to start interacting together. And I think on the flip side, this is where Interfaith Ministries' opportunities lie in making that happen. And I think Interfaith has done a very good job of bringing such a diverse community together into one.
As a decade, century, and millennium came to an end, there was much to be celebrated. But the decades that followed tested these triumphs and proved the importance of understanding, respect, and collaborative service. The terrorist attacks on September 11th, 2001, killed nearly 3,000 people and injured nearly 6,000 more. The events changed the nation and the world. The following month, the U.S. and allied nations were at war in Afghanistan. In March of 2003, they were at war in Iraq. The results were devastating and the effects widespread. The events of 9/11 sparked fear throughout the country as many struggled to understand the tragedy. Interfaith relations, outreach, education, and dialogues programs were crucial to healing and uniting the people of Houston. IM's refugee services doubled its staff members as Houston saw a swell in refugees from Afghanistan.
You know, what we found was when people get together and talk, they find out that, they're worried about the weather, they're worried about making their mortgage payment, they're worried about getting their kids into a good school. I mean, these great commonalities that bind the human experience together. When people talk to each other, they figure that out pretty quickly.
One critical area of interfaith service and collaboration was in preparing for and providing aid in the face of natural disasters. And when Hurricane Katrina hit, the organization put its plan into action and fed over 3,000 seniors and children each day.
I happen to be chair of the board of Interfaith Ministries when the Katrina hurricane happened in Louisiana, and Bill White was mayor of Houston, and he wanted our city to be very hospitable. So he reached out to Interfaith Ministries to be sure that we had an interfaith presence in all the decisions and actions that were made, whether it was in feeding people or helping them find temporary housing, even in the shelters themselves.
The organization again provided critical aid after Hurricane Harvey. One of the greatest needs after Harvey was delivering meals to homebound seniors. The Meals on Wheels program in particular saw great change. They added breakfast and weekend meals. In 2007, they also launched the Anna Meals program, which delivers pet food to Meals on Wheels clients.
When I came to Interfaith Ministries, we were serving one hot meal a day, Monday through Friday, to approximately 2,750 seniors. But the question was, is it possible that there are people, seniors, that are hungry more than once a day? And is it possible that there are seniors that are hungry on the weekends?
I think our greatest achievement whilst I was the chair was the capital campaign, and for us to relocate to one campus.
The 2000s presented diverse challenges and opportunities for Houston as it grew into the most diverse city in the U.S.
The city, if anything, it's always been a city that welcomed diversity and different cultures and different faith traditions, but I think it's even grown stronger and more welcoming of diversity in the past few years. And the mantra of the strength of shared beliefs is personified by the work that's being done by Interfaith Ministries.
Interfaith Ministries turned its eye to the future. The Meals on Wheels program expanded into the Galveston County area. In 2017, Volunteer Houston became part of the IM family. The program connects passionate people to agencies and programs that need volunteers.
I think IM is a connector, and that our role is to find opportunities to cross the boundaries that are sometimes imposed by race, by religion, by background, and not to combine that into a big melting pot, but to weave that tapestry so that all the colors and all of the different things that we bring uniquely to the process come together to form a beautiful Houston, a greater Houston.
On our 50th anniversary, we want to celebrate all that we've been able to do to help Greater Houston throughout the decades. Today, our Meals on Wheels program provides hot meals to more than 4,300 homebound seniors. We have helped resettle refugees from more than 30 countries. Our interfaith programs continue to educate, engage, connect, and mobilize people of diverse faith traditions. And we continue to bring people together for collaboration and service with Volunteer Houston. In 2019, under the leadership and vision of IM's President and CEO, Martin Kaminsky, Interfaith Ministries opened the Brashit and Bashar Kalai Plaza of Respect, an installation symbolizing the heart of Houston, where they will host and bring diverse groups together to foster respect, dialogue, and service. But this is just the beginning. We look forward to the amazing work we can do in the future as we continue to support a city that respects all faith traditions and grow together in the strength of shared beliefs.